Welcome back, everyone. As usual, we are two dudes talking 80s. I'm John. That's my partner in crime, Lewis.
Hello.
Good job, man. You didn't injure yourself. Um,
Always a plus.
Always a plus. Oi to the bay. So today we're going to talk about something that happened a lot in 80s movies. People fought. And like Laz Rocket once sang, you're sometimes forced to fight. And see what I did there? Um, but before we get into this, I'm gonna give this a caveat because everyone's gonna be like, "You guys are lame. You missed this." I didn't get into Jackie Chan movies until they did the American release of Rumble in the Bronx. So I didn't see those movies. I've seen them now. So, just a disclaimer for me, I focused on the movies I saw in the 80s that I enjoyed at that time, as opposed to going back and looking back at things like Jackie Chan movies. And you don't watch Jackie Chan movies at all, so you have no excuse.
I watched some of his older. No, I'm sorry, not older. His more recent stuff. Not back when it was strictly martial arts. It's more of his comedic stuff. But yeah, you're right. Going
That's
back
kind of what
back
he
that.
always did. That's
Oh,
kind of
was
what
it?
he always did. Yeah, that was always kind of his style. What's crazy is if you go watch Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, one of the greatest martial arts movies of all time, most people would say is the greatest movie of all time, martial arts movie of all time. Jackie Chan is in there.
Huh.
You'll miss him, but Jackie Chan's in there. And apparently he really enjoyed his time with Bruce Lee. And what was funny is Brandon Lee, Bruce's son, paid homage to Jackie Chan and some of the stunts that he did in Rapid Fire. So kind of comes full circle. But
Very
anyway, so if
nice.
everyone's like, hey, where the hell's Jackie Chan? That's why Jackie Chan's not there. Plus, Lewis doesn't watch any of his movies. So, ready to lead us off with your first phenomenal, amazing, wonderful pick?
Yes, and I feel a little bad because I brought this movie up before and I've talked about the fight scene in this movie before, but it's so epic and I it was just immediately the first one that came into my head, so I'm gonna include it again. It's a little movie directed by John Carpenter called They Live. It was released in 1988. Roddy Piper, I get his name correctly this time, who unfortunately passed away on July 31st, 2016 of a heart attack. He was in this movie prominently featured, as well as Keith David. And at the end of the movie, they just have this absolutely epic battle that just doesn't seem to end.
I think it's
And
kind of more the
it's,
middle of the movie, but as
oh, was
opposed
it?
to the
I
end.
remember towards the end.
No, it's a little bit more towards the middle.
But all right, well, it's been a while since I've seen it. I actually have that one on CD, but that one is in cellophane.
On CD.
Uh, on DVD,
Okay.
and well, it's technically a CD. But anyway,
And I'm home
yeah.
renting.
So, but yeah, so I immediately thought of that one. I've mentioned it before, but I had to bring it up again.
No, that's a great pick. And it's one I thought about too. When you saw it the first time, and I think you and I were together. I think the first time we saw it was together in the theaters, and it was just absolutely ludicrous the length of this fight. Just every time you think that it's gonna end, it continues, which was pretty cool. And not a very much a street fight. They fight pretty dirty in there, and South Park does a great rendition of it. You have to look at that one. Using Timmy and I want to say Butters, but it's not Butters. Forget the other.
I don't remember the name of the
Yeah,
other kid.
but great pick, ludicrous fight scene, and one that's not on my list. So good job.
All right.
Um, It's kind of a punchline now, right? Unfortunately, but back in 1988, this dude came out and he was badass because you hadn't seen anything like that. And I'm talking about Steven Seagal, and his first feature movie was Above the Law, Nico Toscani. I think the fight scene that I'm referring to is they pull up on him. They have all these automatic weapons, shoot up his car. He pulls around, or he pulls out when they need to reload, and he's got his handgun. And somehow takes down 5 guys with his handgun. One guy goes, "Hey, badass, you can't take all of us." He shoots him, says, "Well, I'll get an A for trying." Brings him into this convenience store and proceeds to beat the crap out of these guys. And the thing that was really cool about it is Steven Seagal is known for the art of Aikido. And what that is essentially is using your opponent's momentum against them. So it was the first time you'd really seen that type of martial art, at least for me, on a big screen or a small screen or a screen of any kind. I didn't even know it existed till Steven Seagal. Um, Apparently, like his dojo in LA was failing after the movie came out. It was sold out every day.
Wow.
Take classes with him, so it really showed a different type of martial art. Steven Seagal was in his prime. He wasn't all overweight, wasn't had that jet black goatee. He actually looked like somebody that could kick ass. So that's why I had to include that in this very unique fighting style. I do have to tell a little bit of a story about this whole Seagal thing. Years ago, right before I went to the police academy, I had the wonderful opportunity to train with a gentleman named Judo Gene LaBelle. Judo Gene LaBelle was a huge judo guy, obviously judo. He also was a grizzled veteran of stunts, and he was in tons of movies as a stuntman. Total badass, the epitome of tough guy. I was, like I said, I was about to go into the academy. I was probably in the best shape of my life or close to it. And I went to a class, and he was actually the instructor that day. And Judo Gene goes, "Who in here is new?" And I raised my hand. He goes, "Come here, you're going to be my dummy." "Yes, sir." I don't know how old he was at this time, significantly older than me. That dude could have killed me a million different ways, and there was absolutely, but with his hands, there was absolutely nothing I could have done to prevent it. Dude was a badass, super cool guy, very awesome guy. It was just an honor to get to meet him and be twisted like a pretzel by him. The famous story about the reason I brought up Judo Gene LaBelle is later on, when Seagal really his ego got out of control and you hear all these horrible things, and pretty much everyone says he's a complete scumbag of a human being. I guess he was on set one time and he was claiming that because of his superior technique that he was incapable of being choked out, and he would be rough with stunt people and everything else. And I guess one day Judo Gene LaBelle had enough of it and just choked his ass out. And Seagal proceeded to crap his pants after being choked out by Judo Gene. This is not a story that Judo Gene he has brought up since, but this was one of those stories that was brought up by other people, and then he had to address it from what I read. And he says, "Yeah, it happened." Of course, Seagal says, "No, it never happened." But so I at least when I went with several rounds of being twisted into a pretzel by Judo Gene, I did not crap my pants. So one up on me over Steven Seagal.
A judo, a chop, chop, chop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if Bruce Lee looks out, Bruce Lee worked with Gene LaBelle, and actually Gene taught him grappling.
Wow.
I mean, that's the kind of legend we were talking about. So don't, and like I said, that guy would have killed me any which way he wanted to with his bare hands, and I couldn't have done anything about it. 33, 34, best shape of my life, felt strong as could be. And I'm like, he had to be in his 60s, mid 60s, I'm thinking at the time. Couldn't have done it
Impressive.
then.
Wow. That's impressive. Cool, man. Good pick. The next one I'm going to go with, I was actually struggling with this subject for a little bit until I really started thinking about what fight scene could constitute. So another epic fight scene is in a movie that was directed by Brian De Palma, came out in 1983, called Scarface. And the very, very end, and that one I'm sure was the very, very end of the movie, where Al Pacino's actor Tony Montana, uh, he's his fortress of solitude is being rushed by the enemy, and he's seeing it all on the video cameras and stuff, and he's got this big pile of coke on in front of him at his desk, and he knows that his demise is close, so he just snorts a big bunch of it, and he pulls out this freaking, looks like a small missile launcher. It just says, I don't know what it was, but and he's sitting there and he's all like, yeah, you fucking with me, you fucking with the best, and he just starts blowing everybody away. Ultimately, he does reach his demise in a very grand fashion, but epic, epic, epic scene. I just remember hearing about it over and over, when we were young, and finally watching it and going, yeah, that was pretty cool.
I honestly I have not seen that movie since I saw it in the theaters.
Wow.
I actually saw it in the theater. I remember seeing it at Hillsdale Cinema, and I've never just never understood the fascination of it. I guess, like so many people have such a fascination with it. I never understood it. And I've never gone back to revisit it. That's when he's saying hello to his little friend, right?
That's, yep. Say hello to my little friend,
Remember who his wife was in the movie, right?
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call. I don't remember it. I remember the shootout. I just don't remember too much about it. But good call. That does constitute a fight scene. Um, my next pick, I'm gonna go with Rocky Four, and it's strange because I prefer Rocky Three. I think Rocky Three is, I think out of all the Rocky movies, Rocky Three is my favorite. I mentioned this before. Rocky Four, seeing the director's cut a couple years back in the theaters, like, wow, this is the way they redid it is really cool. But I love the Ivan Drago Rocky Balboa fight scene in Rocky Four. Incredibly realistic. Just one of those ones you can go on and on about. I guess Stallone was actually sent to the ICU for 4 days due to this fight scene. I guess,
Wow.
yeah, I guess, Dolph Lundgren, who was playing Ivan Drago, was hitting him so hard that it caused health issues, and Stallone had to be, airlifted to an ICU, and where he
Holy
remained
crap.
for 4 days. Um, he doesn't remember it. He goes, I don't really remember that, Dolph Lundgren, that is, but he goes, Stallone keeps mentioning it, so I guess there's something to it. So they definitely were hitting one another, to make it look as realistic as possible. Apparently, sometimes a little too realistic, but just a great fight scene, and you can't go wrong with any of the Rocky, fight scenes, or the big championship matches. But that one always stuck out as something super special, especially the way Rocky just kind of overcomes, which he always did, right? These insurmountable odds to defeat Ivan Drago. Sorry, spoiler alert. The movie's a million years old. If you haven't seen it now, sorry. But that one was always really super special to me.
Yeah, no, the whole franchise, like you mentioned, is just pretty phenomenal with the fight scenes. And I really wanted to call out, I think it was Rocky 2, because that one's near and dear to my heart. It's one of the first movies I've ever seen in the theater, but unfortunately that was like 1979, so it didn't make my
Wow.
list. But very good call out. Very good call out.
That Rocky 2 was it your first movie in the theater?
My first movie that I ever saw in a theater, Fashion Island Theater, saw it with Craig
Wow.
Childress, and Rocky 2 was the first movie I ever saw.
That's crazy. I can't remember the first. My parents took me to movies all the time, and some very inappropriate movies. We'd go to the drive-ins all the time and all that. So I don't remember one. I think one of my first movies that I can remember. I remember Disney's Robin Hood was one. those kinds of movies. And I remember one of the Planet of the Apes movies was one of the first movies I remember seeing in the theater. But
Right, right. Yeah, my parents weren't big movie goers, so I was a late bloomer. The next one I'm gonna pick was a movie that I hadn't heard of until maybe about half an hour ago.
cool.
But the fight scene, it captivated me in such a way that I had to bring it up because it's an epic fight scene. The movie was directed by Phil Joannou. Uh, it was released in 1987 called 3 O'Clock High. Have you heard of this at all?
Buddy Revell, yeah. I
You
saw
have.
it in the 80s.
I didn't see this movie and I saw the fight scene and I thought this is absolutely the David versus Goliath. I mean, this is awesome. And where so basically I don't know anything about the movie other than the last scene where you've got this big bully guy, and he's fighting the nerd guy in school. And the nerd guy's getting his butt kicked, and the bully guy pulls out brass knuckles and gets ready to hit him. And the nerd guy has an accomplice nerd guy that jumps out of the crowd and tackles the bully. And the bully then drops the brass knuckles. And I guess one of the friends of the nerd that was actually in the fight uh, grabs the brass knuckles, gives it to him, and then he hides them behind his back. And so the assisting nerd gets kicked in the nards and tossed off to the side. And then the bully goes back and starts to divert his attention to the original guy that he was fighting, not realizing that he had the brass knuckles. So he comes in, goes to give the guy a punch, misses, and that's when the guy just totally barrels one out and hits him with the brass knuckles, and the guy just falls. Amazing, amazing. I had not seen that before, and I thought this is awesome.
I love that movie, 3 O'Clock High. I've seen it several times. It also punches out the principal, Buddy Revell.
Yeah,
Revell's the
you're
bad
right.
guy. Yeah, he
Yep.
punches out the principal. I think it was played by Richard Tyson. Buddy Revell was played by Richard Tyson. I don't remember the nerd's name, but yeah, that's actually a really great movie, and that's an excellent call, especially considering you just discovered it, 30 minutes ago. But it was recently playing out here at the New Bev, and I don't know why I didn't go see it. I thought about it. I think it was because it was on the weekend, and that's kind of a pain in the butt to get out there for an afternoon matinee on the weekends. But yeah, love that movie. So good
Excellent.
call.
Excellent. Yeah, I had not heard of it.
All right, Buddy Revell. See, um, again, I'm gonna go with a sequel here. Um, I don't think the movie is as good as the first one, but I like the fight scene in this one better. And I'm talking about 1986's Karate Kid 2.
Nice.
What's crazy about Karate Kid 2, I mean, a lot of things are crazy about, but I was just finding out that they started shooting Karate Kid 2 10 days after the original Karate Kid came out. So they must have known
Wow.
that the Karate Kid franchise was going to be a hit. And of course, still going today with Cobra Kai and everything else. But um, the scene I'm talking about, of course, is the finale where it's Daniel LaRusso versus Chosen. And the thing I liked about this fight scene is um, back in those days, you didn't really see a lot of fight scenes like this where, they're falling down and they're almost knocked out. They're having a hard time getting back up, and both people are getting, beat down. It was really well done. It seemed like a very, a more realistic fight scene. And obviously, the stakes were much greater than, a tournament because this was considered a life or death situation. Of course, it doesn't turn out that way, but always really liked it. And then, of course, you get Peter Cetera in there saying "Glory of Love." You know, how perfect.
Yeah, I was thinking about calling out the Karate Kids, but I thought, yeah, it's probably going to be on John's list, so I left that one alone. But hey, very good pick.
To be honest, if I did the Karate Kid, I don't think I would have chosen, no pun intended, I don't think I would have chosen the fight scene between Johnny and Daniel. If you go back and rewatch the original Karate Kid in the tournament, the semifinals are Johnny versus this guy. I think they call him Daryl in the movie too. And it's a gentleman by the name of Daryl Vidal. I've met him a couple times. Really nice guy, and he is totally legit. He's like an eighth degree black belt now. Um,
Wow.
but I remember seeing the original Karate Kid and watching how Daryl Vidal, did his kicks and everything else. Very athletic, very acrobatic. Never in a million years could I do that stuff, but I remember that really sticking with me. So if I had gone Karate Kid, I would have probably chosen the semifinal match between Johnny and Daryl.
Good call. Very good call. This next movie, again, I brought this up very recently. The original is a favorite of mine, and it was directed by Russell Mulcahy. Movie came out in 1986 called The Highlander. And of course, Christopher Lambert was the star playing Connor McLeod, and Clancy Brown was the Kurgan. And the whole premise of the movie was that there was this specific race of humanoids that were immortal, and the only way that you could kill them was by severing their heads. And what each of them had to do was to seek out of their species and kill the other until there was only one. And so it boils down to, again, McLeod and the Kurgan, and they have this huge battle that I think I started out in the streets, I think somewhere, and somehow they fall into a warehouse and they finish off the battle there. And there's like a last sword swoop because they were sword fighting, where they both go at each other, and McLeod hits Kurgan, but you're not sure how much he hit him, and he just stands there for a little bit, and you're wondering, did he get him? Did he not get him? And the guy's head slowly tilts off, and then Connor McLeod becomes the one.
Um, Again, a movie I really enjoyed. I haven't seen in quite a while. I heard I don't know if they're remaking it or if they're doing a prequel to it, but I recently read something about that. So another example of, let's go back and, you know, destroy a cool 80s movie with a remake. Still haven't forgiven them for that remake of Footloose, Abomination. But yeah, so good call. I wish I remembered that fight scene more. It's been a while, so but good call.
Awesome.
Um, I'm gonna go with this is probably one of the more obscure ones that I'm gonna pick, but I this was a staple for me on cable TV and still is. And it came out in I didn't write down the year. Cool. It came out in the 80s though. I know that much. And the movie I'm referring to is Best of the Best. Did you ever see it?
And from the title, it doesn't ring a bell.
So Best of the Best was James Earl Jones is in it, Eric Roberts, Julia's brother, Simon and Philip Rhee. And basically the premise of the movie is James Earl Jones is the coach of the US Taekwondo team. And they're supposed to go to Korea to fight the Korean Taekwondo team. Well, and there are different weight classes. So they're taking 5 fighters in different weight classes. So you kind of follow the journey from them, their tryouts and everything else to the final where they go. The twist in this one is you find out that uh, Philip Rhee, who plays Tommy Lee, um, not to be confused with the drummer for Motley Crue, is actually his older brother fought the villain, which is Simon Rhee. Yes, and they are brothers. Um, Simon Rhee's character of Dae-Han. And when Tommy's brother fought Dae-Han, Dae-Han actually killed Tommy's brother in a Taekwondo match. I never knew they were that vicious. Um, so of course there is a lot of things there, like Tommy wants to get revenge for his brother against Dae-Han and all that. Um, So it comes down to the final fight scene, which is Dehan versus Tommy. And again, Simon and Philip Rhee are brothers. I was fortunate enough to meet Simon. Simon's certainly a very cool guy. But what a great fight it was. And I think the fact that, in addition to both being real, legitimate, and great martial artists, I think the fact that they're brothers, they created something really cool. And it's quite a spectacular fight. I won't say epic because I think you've said that a million times.
It's epic.
It's replaced iconic on this episode. It's a drink every time you hear Lewis say epic. Um, but it's just such a fantastic fight. You can tell that they worked, obviously as brothers, worked so well with one another. And I'm wondering if they actually choreographed their own fight scene. But it's amazing. It's an amazing example of Taekwondo. A lot of really cool kicks. Just fantastic. And I recommend anyone that hasn't seen it, please check out Best of the Best. It was so good that they did a couple sequels too, but definitely the first one was my favorite.
Huh. Yeah, I don't remember ever seeing this one. I'll have to look it up and see if it looks familiar to me. If
Yeah,
not, maybe that'll be one that we'll have to watch together.
no, that ain't happening.
No? Why?
One of the martial artists in it was Christopher Penn. He
Huh.
was, and what you remember, Christopher Penn was, of course, Willard Hewitt in the original Footloose, not the
Hmm.
Abomination one. So, little, 80s trivia there for you.
Cool, man. Good deal. I think this is my last one.
It is.
It is very popular movie from back in 1980, directed by Irvin Kershner, called The Empire Strikes Back. Again, another sword fight with lightsabers this time, but it was between Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill's my God, character,
I'm
and
so glad
Darth
I'm the
Vader.
one drinking.
The fumes are coming this way. It must be something. And yeah, and Darth Vader. And again, it was the whole movie was much darker than the original one, and just the scene where they're sitting there, with their lightsabers, and Luke gets his hand sliced off and finds out that Darth Vader is his dad, and um, just the whole scene. It wasn't just the fighting about it. The fighting was really cool with the lightsabers, but just the whole scene, and sort of the revelation that came out in that movie, in that scene, pretty epic.
Uh, Epic again, really? I
Epic,
think
epic.
that's my drink. So, great call. Yes, that does constitute a fight scene, and I remember being in, seeing it. That was a nice thing, right? Back in those days, you didn't hear everybody, talking about it, or you'd have to go see it right away because you'd find out all this stuff, on the internet or whatever. And I just remember there was just a gasp when he, said he was his father, and it's like, oh my god. And so that was a really cool moment in cinema history. But yeah, that was. I think you're right. I think the overall weight of what the fight scene meant far outweighed what it, the actual fight scene. But excellent pick. And again, way to think outside the box of what constituted a fight scene. I was looking for a lot of aggressive punches and kicks in martial arts, but went a different way with it. So nice balance here. Um,
Nice.
I'm gonna finish mine up with 1987's "I'm Too Old for This Shit." Lethal Weapon.
Nice. I
Yeah,
was thinking about that, but go ahead.
yeah. The end. I'm talking about the end fight scene between Martin Riggs and Gary Busey's character, which was named Mr. Joshua. I don't think they gave him a last name in the movie. I just remember Mr. Joshua. And you remember seeing Joshua early on, where the guy did the thing with the he took a lighter and held Mr. Joshua's arm and did the lighter with it. So you knew he was a badass. Little offsides here. Um, Years ago, this had to be in the probably late '80s, early '90s. I went to Reno with my roommate and another friend. And do you remember? you've never had Showtime, but do you remember a lady named Pat Collins? She was called the Hip Hypnotist.
You know.
So me and my buddy went and saw her. She was performing in one of the casinos in Reno. And he kind of pushed me up to like make me you know to say yeah I'll do it when she's asking for volunteers, so I kind of got pushed. So I was up there, and she did, she hypnotized you and made you do these things. And one of the things that she did was she said, put your arm out and make it, it's like a piece of steel and blah, blah. And she did the same thing with me that, happened in the Lethal Weapon movie. And she said, you'll feel warmth and that's it. And she did it right in front of me. And I was very aware of what was happening. And she did it. And I felt warmth. So I got home and I was like, well, maybe that was just, it doesn't hurt. And I'm trying to put myself in the same mindset. And I scream like a little girl, or a little boy if people get offended by that. Yeah, that thing hurt. But under hypnosis, I was able to do the Mr. Joshua thing. Anyway, complete sidebar, as I so often do. But getting back to that fight between Mr. Joshua and Martin Riggs, I almost said Derek Riggs, the artist for Iron Maiden. Martin Riggs, loved how it was. Again, a lot was on the line. And I loved, how they kind of set it up where it's like, hey man, you want a shot at the title? And they just go for it, and they use, the metal pole, and they just, you have the elements of the rain. I don't know when it ever rains in Los Angeles, but apparently it rained that time, the mud and everything else. And just a very cool, violent, aggressive fight scene. I thought it was an excellent one. Now that you know how crazy both, people really are in real life, I'm amazed it wasn't worse. Um, but yeah, it was filmed. They did it for 4 nights. And I guess, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read that the director tried to keep the tension between Gary Busey and Mel Gibson by keep saying, having him go to the other one, go, yeah, hey, Mel took the last pan or waffle today, and doing that kind of stuff. So apparently they kept him angry at one another. But great fight scene, and one of the better ones of the 80s. With apologies once again to Jackie Chan.
I remember the Lethal Weapon movies just full of action, so I don't remember the specific fight scene. It's been a long time since I've seen any of the Lethal Weapon franchise, but I do remember them being pretty crazy. Did see some scenes when I was doing research today, where Mel Gibson, is trying to talk the suicide guy off the top of the building, and he handcuffs himself to the suicide guy, and it was they were crazy, absolutely crazy. Great flicks and just all kinds of action in them. So I'll have to go back and rewatch that.
Yeah, the scary thing about it is, you watch the movies and um not Riggs, Murtaugh, Danny Glover was supposed to be so old. I'm too old for this shit. I'm too old for this shit. You know how old he was when he actually filmed Lethal Weapon 1?
It was like in his 40s, like his early 40s, right?
40.
Uh,
Oops. So I'm way too old for this shit.
that's why you're retired.
That's true. That's why I'm retired. So, any special mentions that you want to give before we finish this bad boy off?
The only other one that I had on the back burner was the Terminator. Again, sort of qualifies as a fight scene there at the very end where the robot's chasing after Sarah Connor, and she terminates it finally. So that was one I kept in my back pocket in case we had dupes. But yeah, that was pretty much it.
The only other one that I had a couple that I was ready to include, but the one I want to give special mention to, and it's not really even a fight scene, and I've mentioned it before on this show, but Raiders of the Lost Ark. that scene where the the antagonist or whatever takes out his sword and starts swinging around, and Indy just pulls out his gun and shoots him and looks, like looks around. And apparently that was just done because Harrison Ford was tired and he goes, "Why don't I just shoot him?" But I want to make special mention of that because I remember seeing that in the theater with my father and how incredibly heartily he laughed during that scene, and even brought it up on the way home and how cool that was. And so it's always a scene that will hold a special place in my heart. So felt the need to bring that one up.
No, that's pretty awesome. And as you mentioned that, I remember my brother also calling out that scene when he actually went to go see it in the theaters with his family, and he was describing, he's all like, "Yeah, this guy was in there like doing stuff, all this sword stuff," and Indiana Jones just goes and shoots him.
Yeah, don't
So
bring
so
a sword to a gunfight.
there you
That's the
go. There
moral
you
of the
go.
story. All right, broski. Well, I think we're about done. Anything else you want to add before we sign off on this?
No, I think that we covered a lot of ground.
Okay. I've heard from people they want to see you start wearing some '80s shirts, so make that happen. Okay.
Sir, yes, sir.
Cool. As always, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so. We're glad you enjoy it. Let us know what your favorite fight scene of the '80s are or were. And again, apologies, Jackie Chan, but I didn't even know of him in the '80s, so that's what I'm gonna go with. Ignorance is my only excuse. All right, so thank you guys, and Lou, take us out, brother.
Peace out.
Thank you guys.